The greatest SS rank assassin sacrifices himself after humanity is wiped out, only to wake up 7 years in the past as a weak outcast student. But the real shock? He returned possessing the Absolute Devour System, the exact same demonic power the Emperor of Hell used to kill him. In this video, watch how Chen transforms from the Academy's laughingstock into a one-man army, using demonic powers to brutally crush his bullies and literally shattering the Academy's assessment machine just by unleashing a fraction of his aura. But what happens when he publicly humiliates the top student council leader? And how will he prepare for the hellish invasion that gets closer every single day? In the year 2067, our world fell into the abyss of the Darkfall, where planet Earth witnessed a complete invasion by hordes of demons, turning it into a raging hell and a graveyard of ash. Amid this crushing destruction that obliterated the landmarks of human civilization, Si Chen stood tall in his final stand as the sole resistor who refused to surrender. In a final desperate act of defiance, the last human assassin of the legendary SS rank stood facing his bloody demise with rebellious looks that would neither break nor submit. But to understand this ruin, we must return to square one, exactly 7 years ago, when the armies of the Demon King suddenly swept through our world like an inescapable nightmare. And there stood the terrifying tyrant Lan Yu, glaring at Chen with cruel mockery, coldly sneering at humanity's last remaining hope. Announcing an inevitable end, the beast prepared with heavy steps to devour the exhausted hero, considering him nothing more than a final delicious meal. Dimensions began to crack around him, while a dark, destructive crimson energy gathered like a storm of doom between the Demon King's claws. Lan Yu's features twisted with blind greed, aspiring to devour Chen's body to absorb his vital energy and multiply his absolute demonic power. Without an ounce of hesitation, the villain unleashed a sweeping attack. A torrent of roaring crimson energy shot forth with the aim of erasing the hero from existence in a single strike. In a fleeting moment, pitch darkness blanketed the scene as the raging bloody storm completely swallowed Chen's torn body. And as he was being crushed, a reel of memories flashed before his eyes. The specters of family and loyal comrades appeared to the hero in the dark throes of his death.
Here, malice boiled in his torn veins, and overwhelming, desperate anger swept over him for the brutal loss of everyone he had ever loved. Armed with a final death wish, he made a decisive and suicidal resolve to drag this arrogant tyrant with him to the bottom of hell. In an act of absolute self-sacrifice, Chen detonated the last drop of his energy to unleash his ultimate and forbidden technique, the sweeping flare of annihilation. Faced with the horror of this destruction, the Emperor of Hell froze in his place. The shock of the explosion and the tyrant's terror paralyzed all his demonic senses. The hero embraced his obliteration, smiling bravely, as the bright white flash completely obliterated his body and swallowed him into nothingness. And in that final white flash, the fleeting moments of farewell were crowned by the image of his beloved sister with her warm smile. Then a sweeping nostalgia washed over him as the specter of his great teacher manifested in his final moments, concluding this bloody longing with the appearance of his absent parents' faces in his fatal dying flash. An indescribable, bitter regret squeezed his heart. The hero's soul was torn with sorrow over his helplessness and weakness, unable to be a shield to protect them from this hell. The heartbreak of hindsight struck him like a poisoned dagger, with a fatal realization that his early discovery of the abyss rifts would have been enough to change the course of this ominous fate. That great lost opportunity, where aborting the birth of the first emperor would have erased this absolute catastrophe from existence. A desperate certainty overwhelmed him that had he averted the tragedy with an early confrontation, he would have prevented this massive loss that cost humanity its existence.
With his final breaths, the final curtain fell, and complete darkness swallowed the entire scene like a silent grave. Then, in a miracle he did not expect, a confused awakening began to creep into his veins as the hero very slowly regained consciousness amidst a staggering, blurry vision. He endured the pain tearing through his head, and his eyes opened with extreme heaviness, as if rising from a slumber that lasted for centuries, only for the shock of the place to strike him like a thunderbolt when Chen found himself lying quietly on the bed of his old familiar room. He jumped from his bed in panic, unable to believe this impossible survival, examining his weak palms to realize a shocking truth: he was still alive and breathing.
A sudden hysteria swept over him, and with erratic, crazed looks, he began to question everything around him, refusing to believe the reality of this peaceful time and place. With staggering steps and trembling legs like a child newly learning to walk, he eagerly headed towards the window to explore his external surroundings. And from behind the glass, an unbelievable visual paradox slapped him. The sight of the quiet, safe university campus contrasted completely with the images of blood and hell etched into his memory. He drowned in absolute bewilderment, shattered under the weight of the shock of life and colors returning to a world and people devoured by annihilation years ago. With slow and exhausting comprehension, the war-torn hero's mind gradually began to accept the details of this miraculous reality that defied the laws of nature. The impossible had happened, and the legend materialized through a bloody time leap that turned the hands of time back 10 full years. Suddenly, the silence of his reverie was broken by an automated ring and a cold mechanical voice piercing his senses out of nowhere. A completely new system popped up before him, a blue holographic interface successfully announcing the complete integration of a monstrous talent called Absolute Devour. With cautious anticipation and bated breath, his trembling hand reached out to grab his mobile device's screen with extreme tension to dispel doubt with certainty. Only for the glowing numbers to slap him with a decisive temporal confirmation. The device's screen confirmed that today was May 16, 2157. Here, a definitive certainty settled in his heart. The hero's return from death was confirmed, exactly 3 years before the appearance of the first emperors of Hell. A deadly race against time had begun. He had only 3 fleeting years to prepare and arm himself before the emergence of the terrifying demonic emperor, Wrath. That awaited nightmare and fiery emperor is the one who will tear the fabric of dimensions with his brute force to bring absolute destruction to this peaceful world, where he will lead a coming invasion that spares nothing, and hordes of mutants will crawl behind the emperor to swallow the earth and drown it in blood. But in this new life, the fire of revenge ignited, and Chen's eyes gleamed with an invincible resolve and a dark desire for vengeance and the annihilation of everyone who robbed him of his past. He set his sights on the only strategy for salvation. Crushing the first emperor early is the only key to tipping the scales of fate and closing the gates of hell forever. Amid his bloody plans, the Absolute Devour interface flashed once more, raising questions and confusion in the hero's mind about the nature of this mysterious power. This interface had become a persistent phenomenon, a glowing digital panel floating solidly and defying logic, like a shadow accompanying him since the first second of his awakening. And with the statistics of this cursed system revealed before him, the beginning of the epic was declared, for this blue screen represented the first starting spark towards his monstrous ascent to crush gods and demons. Time stopped in Chen's eyes as the system statistics suddenly popped up in the void, a digital interface glowing with data he had never seen before. This was the major turning point, for in his past life, he fought his wars as a natural awakened, relying on survival instinct without any assistance system to guide him. Since awakening is a rare miracle that knocks on human doors only in a tiny percentage, one lucky person out of every 10,000. For this reason, the National Awakened University remains the exclusive and elite sanctuary that only accepts those with superior abilities and innate talents. But Chen's had a humiliating background in that forgotten past. He was merely a helpless, worthless young man who aroused the pity of those around him. And now, this gloomy medical bed bears witness to his bitter reality, his body shattered as a result of a severe beating he received at the hands of bullies. Suddenly, a mysterious flash cut through his silence. An unknown icon began radiating with a cold, suspicious blue gleam right before his eyes. Energy exploded around him as the lightning assassin interface materialized, a holographic panel carrying promises of superhuman power that could almost destroy reality. Chen felt his old identity returning to life, with the unbridled powers of lightning flowing through his veins once again, reforming his weak body. He was overcome by a major temporal surprise. He realized that the awakening of his powers in this timeline had occurred much earlier than his memory dictated. On high alert, Chen began to dive into the depths of his class options, examining his new skills through the glowing panel. But in the blink of an eye, that digital system evaporated and faded, leaving the room to return to its usual quiet. At that moment, Ma Long barged into the room recklessly, his features covered in panic and pure concern for his comrade. Ma Long began a frantic examination of Chen's wounds and bruises, eagerly asking if he had truly regained consciousness after that bloody incident. Chen observed his comrade's actions and realized in complete secrecy that the floating screen was still hidden from everyone. No one saw it but him. In complete bewilderment, Ma Long was surprised by the bruises disappearing from Chen's body with inhuman speed, unleashing his amazed chatter before this medical miracle. Chen cast a silent, examining look at the features of his living roommate, feeling the warmth of his presence that he had long lost. But his black memory suddenly conjured the scene of the future invasion when he saw Ma Long's body torn to pieces mercilessly before his eyes. Only here was the realization of the return complete in his mind. Meeting his living comrade was the final certainty that he had truly returned from the clutches of death. Ma Long interrupted him with a call of duty, urging the necessity of getting up and preparing for the fateful annual assessment that would take place tomorrow. For there is no leniency in this assessment. Successfully passing it is the final and only obstacle to obtaining the graduation certificate. They went out together, merging into the crowds of students gathered in the vast university campus under the morning sun. The campus was living a strange contradiction between the trainees toiling in the fields and the relaxed ones resting under the shadows of the trees. Chen inhaled the clamor of the university, an entire life that had completely perished and turned to ash in his bloody memory. And with a cold slip of the tongue, Chen spoke of the strangeness of seeing living people, which sent a shiver of terror through his comrade's body, who thought he had gone mad. Ma Lung tried to escape that moment, hurrying his steps to distance himself from Chen's suspicious and desolate aura. But the scars of memory were stronger, as the hero's mind was swept by memories of bitter helplessness and moments of unforgettable loss. And from the heart of that pain, Chen swore a blood oath, pledging to prevent history from repeating its tragedies, even if it cost him burning the world. He realized he was in a frantic race against time, and made a decision to ascend the ladder of power without mercy or pause. He knew that the abyss rifts filled with blood and death were the only effective slaughterhouse to raise and awaken's energy and develop his skills. He thought about the pyramid of power and the guild's monopoly over those rifts, and wondered curiously about his actual rank now in the classification that extends from S to E. For in this world, the majority of students reside at the bottom of the classification, rank E, while only a distinguished few reach rank D. His eyes glimmed with a desire to test his strength, wondering what number would appear before the measuring devices if he took the test at this moment. He felt a massive evolution in his senses and an absolute certainty that he had surpassed the abilities of his comrade and the students around him by vast light years. Suddenly, his train of thought was cut off by a surprise attack. A stray basketball tore through the air at lightning speed to crash directly into Ma Long's face. The comrade fell to the ground violently amidst the shattering of his glasses and blood that began to bleed profusely, staining the snow and dirt. From afar, the gang of bullies advanced with their disgusting laughs, ready to resume their favorite hobby of torturing the victim. But they do not know that the monster has awakened. The leader of the bullies approached with a smile of biting sarcasm, rudely mocking how quickly his two victims had recovered from the severe beating he gave them just yesterday. A sudden terror washed over Ma Long, and his bleeding face turned pale, horrified by their misfortune of encountering this tyrannical bully again at such a terrible time. In complete contrast, Chen showed a terrifying steadfastness. He faced the arrogant gang with icy, deadly looks, devoid of any hint of panic or brokenness. With foolish bravado and blind arrogance, the bully began to boast loudly before his entourage about the two boys' amazing ability to endure his continuous punches and kicks like human punching bags. With disgusting arrogance, the tyrant sharply scolded them for not immediately running to buy and serve cold drinks as offerings of obedience and submission to him. Submission and fear drove him to collapse. Ma Long began to tremble violently, offering consecutive and humiliating apologies as he tried to hurry to fulfill the scoundrel's demands. But the spark of rebellion had ignited. Chen grabbed his companion's shoulder and firmly stopped him, then turned and coldly demanded that the gang offer an immediate apology for what they had done. In a silent moment of recollection, the hero matched this bully's ugly face with the worst nightmare scenes etched into his painful and humiliating past. The shock of the past struck him like a whip as dark and humiliating memories surfaced of them intentionally submerging his head and cruelly suffocating him in filthy toilet water. He bitterly recalled the sadism of these monsters when they used to torture him mercilessly under the false pretext of claiming they were stimulating his magical awakening by pushing him towards the brink of death. He remembered with sorrow the helplessness of his comrade when Ma Long was brutally beaten and dragged across the ground during his desperate and brave attempts to rescue him from their hands. At this moment, Chen reached a terrifying realization and complete certainty that absolute evil is not limited to those monsters lurking in the depths of the rifts. Rather, there is a filthy, inescapable truth that the brutality and baseness of some humans sometimes exceed the hideousness of the abyss demons themselves. The boiling blood in the bully's veins cut through his reverie. The tyrant's features ignited with red anger as his alleged pride was scratched and publicly rejected.
In a desperate moment of pleading, Ma Long grabbed his friend's arm and begged him with eyes overflowing with fear to stop this suicidal rebellion before it was too late. But the time had passed. The tyrant launched his attack, and the rank E fighter Guangcheng lunged like a raging beast to crush his rebellious prey. With unconcealed contempt, the tyrant's entourage gathered around them in a closed circle, waiting to enjoy the spectacle of crushing and disciplining the two boys with sadistic passion. The massive opponent approached quickly, a green energy beginning to glow from his fist, surrounded by a light magical aura characteristic of the lower ranks. The hero showed mighty steadfastness. He rooted himself in place like an unwavering mountain before the tyrant's angry roar that tore through the air. With rude provocation before striking, the bully challenged Chen, shouting for him to dare repeat his rebellious words once more. The verbal slap came like a sharp blade, a cold and calm response from the hero demanding the opponent get out of his face immediately before he regrets it. Madness drove him to lose his mind completely, so he threw a wild mana-charged punch at Chen's face, but it ended with a shocking surprise for everyone. In a scene representing a legendary parry, Chen stopped this sweeping attack with terrifying ease, using his bare palm with complete coldness as if swatting a fly. This collision resulted in a violent backlash. The crushing force of the parry threw the massive attacker's body backward, leaving him reeling and completely losing his balance. A silence of the graves prevailed. A total bewilderment silenced the tongues of the entire entourage and the waiting crowds whose eyes widened in shock. It seemed like an impossible miracle. Silent questions floated in everyone's eyes about how an ordinary student, supposedly unawakened, could parry a lethal attack like that. Guangcheng felt deeply insulted. The bully's face burned with anger and shame for having his prestige broken and being crushed so easily before all those crowds. In contrast, a demonic and terrifying smile appeared on the hero's face, looking at him as the perfect lab rat. He had finally found the right victim to test his new powers. With a silent command of activation in his mind, golden blue sparks erupted around Chen, transforming him into a living storm, breathing with the terrifying skills of the lightning assassin. His comrade's shock was indescribable. Ma Long's jaw literally dropped in sheer amazement and disbelief at this legendary and sudden awakening of his weak friend. In a humiliating lure, and amidst the bright lightning flashing around him, the hero provoked his collapsed opponent to step forward and attack again with a slight gesture of his hand. The opponent responded with desperate shielding, summoning the impregnable shield he mastered, turning his entire arm into a solid, jagged rock mass. Then he launched a counterattack with all his might. His stone punch surged like a crushing meteor, tearing through the air to end the rebellious hero's life in one blow. But with light speed beyond the eye's perception, Chen dodged the lethal blow like a touchless ghost, lunging at the same moment with a surprise counterattack. It was a devastating lightning strike. His electrified fist, loaded with years of rage, plunged with brutal cruelty into the center of the bullying scoundrel's face. With absolute decisiveness and without the need for a second blow, that single punch sent the massive bully flying through the air, falling like a broken doll, motionless. A mental paralysis struck all those present. The minds of the student crowds and bullies froze in absolute terror at the horror of this crushing scene and the terrifying shift in the balance of power. A complete cognitive inability struck everyone. The lightning-fast crushing speed that Chen displayed far exceeded the limited capacity of those present to comprehend or believe. From amidst his blood, the defeated fallen one launched a base accusation, justifying his humiliating defeat with a false claim that he had been subjected to a sudden treachery and an unexpected attack. In a desperate cry for help, the leader of the bullies let out a hysterical scream, ordering his panicked followers to intervene immediately to save him and crush his opponent. But he was met with total abandonment. The gang froze in their places, completely ignoring their leader's orders as if birds were perched on their heads. For the aura of death and the suffocating energy emanating from Chen's body were enough to paralyze the movement and strike absolute terror into the heart of anyone who even dared to approach. With blind arrogance, the tyrant staggered to his feet, vowing in a voice dripping with anger to tear his opponent to pieces to restore his shattered pride. But his response came with a smooth and deadly frustration. Chen blocked his rushing attack with icy coldness and without any noteworthy effort. Soon, the disgusting smell of roasting flesh spread when Chen's electrified fist completely burned the attacker's arm, wresting from him resounding and tearing screams of pain. He followed it with harsh verbal humiliation, an icy whisper in the opponent's ear, assuring him that he is too despicable and weak to be considered a real rival. Then he delivered the knockout blow, a lightning-fast, striking punch that shattered the bully's jaw in a single hit, ending this miserable bout forever. That punch resulted in forced flight. The massive scoundrel's body was thrown flying through the air like a broken, weightless rag doll, ending this flight with a devastating collision, a violent and terrifying crash of the opponent's body into the harsh stone wall of the university courtyard, leaving behind the eternal mark of defeat, a crater and deep cracks carved by his shattered body into the wall, immortalizing the scene of this humiliating fall before everyone.
The stillness of terror pervaded the place. A crushing and suffocating silence swallowed the entire crowd, terrified and stunned by this unexpected mighty brutality. In a state of comrades' denial, Mao Long stood frozen in his place like an idol, completely unable to comprehend or believe the bloody scene before him. A bewildered question echoed in his mind as he lived the shock of his ordinary and weak friend transforming into this terrifying and conquering entity. As for Chen, with complete analytical coldness, he ignored all this surrounding bewilderment, returning to study the data of his Devourer system in silence and deep concentration. The experiment proved absolute control. The hero confirmed his ability to fully control the lightning assassin form and activated smoothly whenever he wished. And he realized the magnitude of this physical superiority. His body, which was supposed to be normally human, now exceeds the strength of rank E by vast and unclassified margins. But suddenly, an early obstacle emerged. His new power collided with a glitch or a mysterious problem in the system directly after this crushing victory. This was manifested in the stagnation of the indicator. Despite his fierce crushing of this strong opponent, the system did not grant him any additional experience points for an upgrade. In an attempt to try another method, he summoned the weapon, a sharp electrified blade appearing in his hand out of nowhere, searching for a bloody way to activate the upgrade. This caused an immediate mass panic. The appearance of this lethal weapon triggered the crowd's hysteria and sparked his comrades' terror of Chan's explicit intent to kill. And he made a deadly threat, pointing his cold, lightning-charged blade directly at the collapsed opponent's vein, aiming to implant absolute and lethal terror deep within his soul. A frightening, bloody question circulated in his mind. Does this cursed system require shedding blood and actually killing opponents to gain the desired experience points? The intent to execute clearly formed within him, and the initial resolve controlled him to take the life of this scumbag bully without an ounce of mercy or hesitation. But a firm intervention occurred when a strong female voice cut through the tense scene, strictly reminding the hero of the university campus laws that prohibit bloodshed. It was political protection, as the vice president of the student council, Ling Yu, intervened personally to end this conflict, demanding he settle for this amount of harsh discipline. She provided a supreme guarantee, pledging her word as a responsible and influential figure that this broken bully would not dare to approach or bother them in the future again. Chen decided to make a tactical retreat. He hid his terrifying lightning weapon as a rational and cold response to this direct official intervention. Deep doubts haunted him, wondering about the council's haste to defend such scum, even though he only showed killing intent as a final warning without actually executing it. But he achieved his goal with overwhelming psychological discipline, realizing that planting absolute and lethal terror in souls is the only effective deterrent to deal with these human parasites. And with the scene transitioning, the night lowered its gloomy and dark curtain, shining the spotlight on the university dorm rooms crowded with students and their conversations. There, Ma Long began narrating the epic, desperately and with glowing passion trying to prove the legend of his friend Chen's amazing powers to their skeptical roommates. He resorted to exaggerated embellishment, providing an emotional and theatrical description of the tyrant's humiliation process and how Chen crushed his panicked gang with a single blow. But he was met with the roommate's mockery. Xiangju doubted the story with biting sarcasm, mockingly asking about the secret of this supposed hero's absence right now if he was truly a legend. Only to receive a shocking answer as Malong simply and naively replied that this terrifying superhero had gone out at night in this darkness to go jogging. Here a sarcastic refutation began, accusing the story of absolute falsehood with a logical argument that real awakens rely on mana and do not run like fools to improve their fitness like ordinary, weak humans. The roommate presented a mocking diagnosis, claiming with a fake look of pity that poor Malong's mind had been severely damaged and lost its sanity from the excessive beating he had received recently, reminding him of a harsh and bitter reality that cannot be escaped through fantasies, which is that the 4 residents of this room combined are the weakest scum and the worst students in the entire batch. With an indisputable fixed rule, Xiangju boasted of his position, arrogantly asserting that an awakened can possess only one combat class throughout their entire life. The ego of this roommate swelled for monopolizing the only offensive class among the room's residents, boasting of his title as an invincible mace mage. With blind ambition, he completely refused to believe the hero's mythical story, looking forward with feverish passion to joining one of the major guilds after graduation. A tension-tinged anticipation prevailed when he reminded them all of the crucial final assessment test to be held the following morning. In another location, far from the student dorms, the dark scene shifts to the terrifying perimeter of a dangerous Class A experimental rift. There, an overwhelming presence manifested as Guangcheng, the absolute leader of the student council, appeared, surrounded by a breathtaking, terrifying, bloody aura.
His clothes reflected pure brutality. The blood of a grinding training massacre still stained his luxurious white coat. In a state of total submission, the end of the deadly training was announced amidst the bowing of all followers in their absolute reverence for their power. In an unexpected encounter at the exit gate, the leader found his failed younger brother waiting for him in the dark. The traces of the crushing defeat were visible. The defeated brother stood staggering, covered in white bandages and filled with black malice. With malicious incitement, the bully pleaded with his older brother to take revenge on Chen, using the flimsy excuse that what happened was a direct insult to the council's prestige. But he was met with the leader's coldness, as Guang Chang cast a harsh, icy look at his crying brother, completely devoid of any ounce of sympathy or pity. However, he issued a quiet and deadly threat, pledging to settle this pending score with Chen personally to crush any rebellion. With a change of scene, we moved to a hall illuminated by crystal chandeliers, where a luxurious dinner banquet was held, gathering the powerful elites of the student council. There, with veiled sarcasm and a cunning smile, Ling Yu wondered about the nature of the awaited harsh response after the leader's brother's public humiliating defeat. The leader expressed deep doubts, showing his extreme surprise at the possibility of a nobody like Chen possessing such an alleged mythical power. Reminding them of the elite's monopoly, all talented students and true awakens are already recruited to work as pawns under the leader's banner, and that is an unbreakable total control. This strict monopoly over the abyss rifts completely prevents any ordinary person from developing or gaining experience. Therefore, the officials showed extreme disdain, coldly downplaying any potential future threat an outcast student like Chen could pose. Meanwhile, Chen was undergoing grueling training, exhausting his weak body with fast sprinting and lifting iron weights under heavy downpours. He believed in the absolute rule of power, a firm certainty that physical bodily toughness is the only foundation capable of absorbing the massive energy of awakening. Despite the sweat and blood, dissatisfaction controlled him, a suffocating feeling that all his current physical effort was still insufficient to face the coming hell. The memory of the catastrophe struck him like a thunderbolt when he recalled the terrifying scene of the Abyss Emperor known as Wrath invading planet Earth. It was an annihilation that spared nothing, a bloody declaration of the beginning of the end of the world, wiping millions of humans from existence in the blink of an eye. He remembered that tragedy that tore his soul apart, the brutal murder of his innocent sister in that dark past at the hands of this specific emperor. For that emperor was the true gate of hell, the first and primary cause of tearing open the major rifts for the demonic invasion. Here he renewed the oath of revenge, an unbreakable bloody vow Chen made to himself in this new miraculous life granted to him. He now had a specific and sole goal, the steely determination to annihilate the Emperor Wrath before the completion of the disastrous 3-year deadline. It is a race against time, necessitating his rapid and insane evolution to confront the growing power of this lurking hidden enemy. Suddenly, an unexpected interruption occurred when the ring of his mobile phone cut through the stillness of the night, halting the hero's harsh training. An emotional shock struck him, paralyzing his limbs, when the name of his sister Sion, whom he had seen die, flashed on the illuminated call screen. With extreme tension and bated breath, Chen answered the call, trying with great difficulty to maintain his composure before this living ghost. A warm, living voice pierced his ears, hearing his sister justify her absence with her extreme busyness in an important school competition. She was driven by an innocent material hope, a sincere ambition to solve their suffocating financial distress by winning the cash prize of that competition. The hero drowned in painful nostalgia and a reverie of the past's cruelty, which aroused his sister's surprise and concern over his long suspicious silence on the phone. He swallowed his tears and made a hidden pledge in his heart to hide the horrific truth from her and an absolute readiness to pay his soul as a price to protect her life in this timeline. He couldn't help but make an emotional confession, expressing with a trembling voice his deep longing to hear her voice after a separation that felt like an eternity to his torn soul. With the innocence of the past, the sister was surprised by his sudden emotional words and promised him with a light laugh a very soon visit the moment she wins. He hung up the line with absolute certainty. He had now fully grasped the reality of this temporal miracle and that the golden opportunity for change was still in his hands. Renewed motives ignited inside him like hellfire, and he decided to double his effort in brutal training to ensure his sister's survival and future at any cost. With the end of the day, Chen returned exhausted to the dorm room after 8 continuous hours of deadly training, only to find his roommates deep in a sound sleep. Under the warm drops of water, Chen immersed himself in a quiet self-assessment. Testing the flexibility of his young body, he began to domesticate his new muscular structure that pulsed with life again. But amidst this calm, a hindering obsession took hold of him. A single disturbing thought dominated his mind, forming the major and only obstacle to his desired ascent. It is the crisis of power monopoly, where elite sects and guilds hold an iron grip on all abyss rifts, the only available outlet for development and gaining upgrades. It is an unjust and merciless system, for depriving the weak of the chance to ascend leaves them as mere easy prey for the awaited demonic invasion hordes. In the midst of his thoughts, a flash of thinking gleamed like a latent curse, leading him to wonder curiously about the nature of his forbidden ability, Absolute Devour, and the secret of this mysterious system. No sooner had he thought of that than a sudden activation occurred. The holographic system began a rapid automated boot-up process, its mechanical echoes resonating clearly within his mind. Announcing full readiness after completing the loading of complex codes and algorithms for this mysterious system that inhabits his soul. Only for the gate announcement to emerge, a red system message heralding the opening of a secret passage toward an entirely unknown and unfamiliar dimension. Suddenly, he was pulled into a terrifying freefall. Gravity vanished around him, tossing Chen into a space vortex that tore through dimensions. This fall ended with a violent impact. His feet touched barren, dead soil, dyed completely in the crimson color of blood. He'd entered a nightmare world. Chen found himself standing in the middle of a desolate and deserted square, under a dark sky that did not belong to planet Earth. Before him stood a terrifying edifice, a massive, dark, Gothic tower centered in the square, like a demonic needle embracing the dark clouds of this dimension. Confusion gripped him for moments as he tried to comprehend his sudden and instantaneous spatial transition from his quiet bathroom to this strange and desolate prison. But a suspicious discovery cut through his thought when he noticed skeletons of hellish wolves scattered on the bloody ground around him. The process of monster resurrection began, the bones intertwined in a horrific scene to form savage death hounds belonging to the Mist monster class. With his quick wit, he reached a rapid conclusion, realizing with certainty that he was now inside an exclusive secret abyss rift completely independent of the human world. He entered immediate combat readiness. The hero summoned his awakening energy, ignoring his wet body, and postponed all his questions to clear this square first. With class activation, the Lightning Assassin interface lit up, immediately granting the hero lightning speed and destructive power, exceeding his natural human rate tenfold. A sweeping attack began. The Death Hounds lunged fiercely, baring their poisoned fangs toward the hero's neck to devour and tear him apart. But he responded with dodge and crush. Chen evaded their attacks like an electric ghost, tearing the monsters' bodies apart with merciless lightning strikes. It was a rapid harvest, a complete massacre and eradication of the monsters without a shred of mercy, collecting their falling loot in the blink of an eye. He showed absolute superiority. Crushing rank E monsters now seemed to him like a simple and boring stroll, thanks to his returned energy and latent skills. This was a tangible reality, for the rancid smell of blood that filled his nose confirmed to the hero that this bloody dimension was real and not just a dream. With every monster brought down, experience points began to flow. The system absorbed 52 net experience points for every corpse. He achieved a rapid upgrade, and upon reaching level 2, he confirmed that this dimension was nothing but a safe and exclusive training field dedicated to him for gaining power away from prying eyes. He felt a massive physical surge, a noticeable and terrifying increase in statistics, and a clear doubling of his speed and power indicators. The euphoria of victory overwhelmed him. He celebrated internally his possession of his own abyss rift, completely away from the control and monopoly of greedy guilds. He decided to seize the opportunity. Chen invested this exceptional gift of fate to compensate for all his past weakness and helplessness. He began testing the limits, pushing his magical and physical energy to their maximum levels to explore his combat capabilities with brutal ferocity. Suddenly, the boss's appearance was announced. The ground in the field split open and a massive pack leader emerged, launching a brute and deadly attack toward the hero. But he achieved a decisive finish and upgrade as Chen crushed this boss with a finishing blow from his lightning blade, raising the hero's level directly to level 3. The boss's loot scattered around him. 18 sharp fangs and a shining energy crystal fell as the tally and reward for this bloody battle. Through mathematical deduction, the hero realized that monster bosses grant massive and doubled experience points, explaining his rapid and insane ascent. But here, a terrifying option appeared. A strange crimson glow floated over the dead boss's corpse, displaying a clear system phrase, "Devourable." Confusion stood in his eyes. The hero contemplated this strange option with wonder and amazement, trying to understand its significance. Then a dark certainty struck him. He realized that this bloody scene represented the true and terrifying essence of his forbidden ability, Absolute Devourer. With a cautious experiment, the hero reached out his hand with curiosity tinged with caution toward the remains of the dead monster. An energy vortex exploded. A dark crimson aura coiled around his arm with ferocity and hunger, as if it were a living creature searching for its prey. A full consumption began, as the energy started gnawing and swallowing the entire corpse with ferocity in a horrific scene that makes the skin crawl. Ending with total erasure, the energy cleared to reveal the final disappearance of the boss's corpse from existence, as if it had never been created. The result materialized in a skill card, as the essence of the dead monster transformed into a bright holographic card, granting him a new and amazing skill, Icy Constitution. A shocking realization paralyzed his thoughts as the hero realized his forbidden ability does not settle for mere killing, but goes beyond that to replicate the powers of dead enemies as combat classes fully subordinate to him. It was a horrific truth beyond comprehension, a shock that shook Chen's very being as he realized the catastrophic and destructive magnitude of this cursed ability inhabiting him. A terrifying discovery followed, freezing the blood in his veins. This absolute power of devouring is the very same brute authority possessed by the demon emperor, Lan, whom he had killed with extreme difficulty in his previous life. What a mocking irony of fate. Here is the human hero succeeding in stripping this dark demonic authority from his executioner to now possess it at his beck and call between his palms. According to the strict and well-known law of awakening, the absolute rule imposes on every awakened human to possess only one combat class throughout their entire lifetime. But what happened now was a breaking of certainty. The hero's body shattered the laws of the entire world, merging and absorbing two different combat classes at once without being torn apart. This opened infinite horizons before him, terrifying and dark possibilities for his combat evolution if he continued to devour more powerful opponents and steal their essence. He is a one-man army, for this ability will grant him an unlimited arsenal of magical classes, becoming himself a complete and destructive army walking in a single human body. Along with this power, a mysterious question haunted him, a deep bewilderment in the hero's mind about why fate chose him specifically to carry this forbidden and heavy gift. This was accompanied by the mystery of the edifice as he raised his eyes wondering about the true and terrifying purpose for the existence of this towering, nightmarish tower standing before him in this dimension. Suddenly, a crushing pressure fell upon him. A terrifying power and a dark aura descended from the top of the tower like an invisible mountain, completely paralyzing the hero's movement and pinning him to the ground. Then a resonant call cut through space, a mysterious and deep voice that made existence tremble, welcoming his arrival and declaring its eager wait for this meeting for a long time. A majestic and frightening appearance followed. A mighty entity with dark wings and armed with two giant blades emerged from the dark summit, calling Chen by his name directly. At that moment, his mind forced him to recall the classification, conjuring the global power pyramid of the awakened that culminates at the legendary rank S, only for the harsh memory of death to slap him, recalling the magnitude of his suffering and his tragic death in his previous life just for managing to reach the threshold of that rank S. Compared to his weak reality now, Chen's current energy, despite his development, barely touches the boundaries of the modest rank D. It was a terrifying gap that could not be bridged, for this entity standing before him sits confidently on the throne of absolute rank S, crushing all the hero's statistics with a single glance. Chen stood in total bewilderment, shocked by the idea of the existence of a Rift Lord belonging to this catastrophic upper class inside this mysterious dimension. His terror was increased by a deadly wonder, a terrifying question circulating in his head about how this foreign demonic entity knew his human name. A desperate, one-sided fight began, where Chen's first clash of blades proved this mighty opponent's ability to completely erase him from existence in a fraction of a second. Despite that, he noticed a clear avoidance of killing. The opponent was intentionally dodging the hero's vital points and keeping him alive, as if teaching him a lesson in submission. It was a continuous humiliation. The entity settled to knocking the hero down over and over, dragging his face in the bloody dirt with complete futility and ease. The boss's mockery rose as the tyrant scoffed with resonant laughs at the pathetic human hero's stubbornness and his absolute refusal to kneel. Here, Chen reached the realization of the purpose. A certainty possessed him that this entity's ultimate goal was not to kill him, but to break his will entirely and force him to submit. Then he presented him with a dark offer. The entity gave him a choice, in a voice like thunder, between relinquishing his freedom or sharing slavery in guarding this eternal edifice. But Chen's response was a flat refusal. He spat blood and declared his preference for death and absolute annihilation over being buried alive as a watchdog for this hell. As punishment for his rebellion, a lightning attack came. The boss's blade cut through the air to tear Chen's flesh and shed his blood faster than a blink. The tyrant's anger exploded, and the entity roared with a voice that shook the earth, asking with contempt if this insect human truly thought himself immune to death. He revealed the reason for patience, explaining coldly that he hesitated in crushing and killing him only because he was the first and only human who dared to desecrate this secret dimension. Suddenly, the resurrection of the dead began. The torn carcasses of the mutants jolted and began moving like sick puppets, driven by strands of malicious purple energy emanating from the ground. A demonic shield materialized. This purple aura enveloped the tyrant's body like an impenetrable solid shield, and from behind it, he issued a final bloody warning to his victim. This was the final warning, giving the hero a final choice between eternal submission at his feet or being crushed and erased until vanishing from existence. But it was faced by a solid resolve. Chen stood despite his bloody wounds, displaying legendary steadfastness and an unyielding determination even as he stared into the face of death. He made the decisive decision. Chen screamed at the top of his voice, announcing his only choice, the annihilation of this boss, and ascending his torn corpse to climb toward the summit. The entity responded with hysterical laughter. The boss burst out laughing with contempt and madness, enjoying this hero's suicidal audacity that will write the end of his life. Ignoring all calculations, Chen rushed in a mad, suicidal attack, aiming for a direct, face-to-face clash with his mighty opponent. The moment of collision began, a bloody and lethal confrontation between the two parties, where sparks flew as blades crashed against each other. In the midst of death, Chen succeeded in revealing the gap. He realized that he had already managed to analyze the monster's defense patterns through the previous blows he had received. He performed a precise temporal observation, brilliantly discovering that the entity needs exactly 0.4 seconds to gather its magical energy before launching any new attack. He executed a brilliant dodge, exploiting this tiny gap and observing the finest movements of the opponent's wrist to evade the strikes of the deadly dark blade like a ghost. He noticed a fatal flaw, a partial muscular paralysis that afflicts the tyrant for only 0.2 seconds as an inevitable recovery period for its body after launching each sweeping attack. He devised a suicidal counterplan, deciding to stab the boss during that short window of temporal paralysis where its defenses are completely non-existent. The time for execution came. He delivered a lightning-fast direct thrust toward the tyrant's heart, exploiting the fatal moment of weakness with extreme precision. It resulted in a massive electric shock. That attack temporarily paralyzed the legendary entity, granting the hero precious seconds to escape with his life. But with a superior reaction, the tyrant's terrifying speed almost dissipated any chance for Chen to retreat or catch his breath. He achieved a narrow escape with great difficulty through the emergency activation of the Flash Master skill, which doubled his speed, enabling him to flee at the last moment under the blade of death. During his retreat, a portal of hope appeared to him. He glimpsed a faint beam of light looming on the horizon, as if it were the only exit from this cursed dimension. With a blind and desperate dash, the hero set off with all his remaining strength toward the sought-after source of light. But it was nothing but a cruel mirage. The light suddenly vanished as if it had never been, drowning the hero again in a pitch-black and frustrating darkness. The boss revealed the truth of the trap to him, confirming in a rough voice that the light was merely an illusion and that there is no exit from this exceptional dimension. Unexpectedly, he showed the opponent's admiration. The entity quietly praised Chen's superior analysis of his movements and discovered its gaps in fractions of a second. He gave him an explicit acknowledgement, considering the human hero a rare and solid phenomenon, worthy of appreciation and respect on the battlefield. The identity reveal came. The tyrant removed his dark mask to appear as Raksha, a rank S entity, and acknowledged with a mysterious smile that the hero is the sought hope. The hero was struck by the shock of matching faces. He knew these terrifying features well. They are the same features used by the Emperor, Lan, in his past life. He drowned in recalling the battle. The hero's memory returned strongly to his last bloody epic and the moments preceding his death in the past. He remembered the manipulation of laws, how Lan used to change his combat classes with absolute and terrifying freedom, bypassing all the natural restrictions of the awakened. He remembered an icy embodiment, when the Emperor in that past transformed into a giant flying monster that freezes souls with its gaze, followed by a fiery embodiment, taking the form of a flaming warrior exploding like a volcano to burn entire cities. Then a botanical embodiment, transforming into a giant mutant of poisonous roots devouring everything living in its path. From among the monsters, his mind reviewed those terrifying and numerous embodiments with which Lan annihilated millions of humans. Suddenly, a familiar form emerged. One specific embodiment among all those demonic shapes stood out clearly in his memory. There was an absolute match. This form matches exactly to the millimeter the shape of the entity Raksha currently standing before him. This led him to a terrifying conclusion. Chen realized that the great Raksha was nothing but a previous victim devoured by Lan, who stole its identity and power. It is an inherited curse, for the hero's possession of the Absolute Devour ability now led him to uncover the shocking truth about the origin of his enemy's power. The certainty of the dimension's truth fell upon him, the catastrophic realization that this sprawling hell and terrifying edifice exist physically inside the hero's own body. It came as a crowning. Raksha declared the hero's full right to inherit this dimension and its contents as a reward for the toughness of his mind and his unbreakable will. A deep confusion possessed him. The hero wondered in silent bewilderment about the contents of this heavy legacy and what it hides for him. Here, the key to nothingness appeared. He handed him a legendary rank SSS key, capable of opening the locked gates of this mysterious tower. He revealed the Abyss prison to him, explaining that the fiercest lords of the Abyss whom land devoured in the past are currently imprisoned as souls behind the doors of this edifice. He gave him the command directive, urging the hero to open the doors and devour these prisoners to absorb their massive energies for rapid ascent. But Chen met him with justified suspicion. He received the key coldly while wondering deep down about the true and hidden intentions behind this generous support from an opponent who was supposed to be an enemy. The Star Warrior bitterly revealed a genocide. The demon emperors had erased his entire clan from existence, merely to satisfy their bottomless bloodlust. Raksha confirmed that this was a delayed revenge, considering Chen the only spark of salvation he had waited for in the darkness for an entire eternity to achieve his vengeance. The hero's thoughts drowned in the mystery of identity, wondering with great confusion about the nature of that man, the unknown figure who predicted his arrival in this dimension. But the leader provided only bloody answers, directing the hero to storm the dark floors of the tower and seize his hidden answers through brute force. In a great, unforgettable sacrifice, the Star Warrior began to dissolve his being as a final offering, granting his massive energy to Chen to destroy their common enemies. Chen was struck by total bewilderment, shocked by the fact that he was forced to swallow and devour the entire essence of his new ally to inherit his power. With explicit incitation, the leader ordered him to abandon his humanity and transform into a living catastrophe that devours all the mutants lurking in the tower's floors. Issuing him a stern warning, alerting the hero to the blind ferocity and extreme brutality characterizing those imprisoned beings. He drew for him the blood-stained path of divinity, with a final testament to crush the enemies and strip their absolute powers to ascend the throne of this destroyed world, so that the final goal would be the instruction to pave the path of ascent with the skulls of enemies until he can devour every single Abyss Emperor one by one. With the start of the fading, the Star Warrior's glowing particles slowly evaporated into the dark void of the dimensional arena, leaving a final tribute as the warrior's voice faded while praising the savage and solid determination lurking in the hero's heart, announcing an absolute worthiness that Chen is the only vessel worthy of embracing this heavy eternal legacy. Suddenly, an energy flood occurred as torrents of pure, radiant astral power swept through the hero's body, concentrating and glowing in his right palm. He achieved an unprecedented, insane surge as the system announced with a massive leap Chen's arrival at level 10 all at once after devouring this great essence. As an additional reward, he reaped a legendary spoil, manifested in the Astral Abyss Bone piece as a rare and unique item of its kind. A new era began as the hero made a silent oath to make the Star Warrior's testament his constant compass on his journey through this hell, to complete a terrifying arsenal with the emergence of the Golden Star Warrior card, granting him massive and terrifying destructive skills beyond imagination. It was a promise in blood, a renewal of his oath to make the tyrants of the Abyss pay dearly for all their crimes with blood and fire. Suddenly, a return to reality occurred. The hero was forcefully pulled from the nightmarish dimension, waking up again amidst the familiar chaos of his university dorm. He was greeted by university clamor, the hustle and bustle of his roommates rushing to make it to the assessment test, met by the hero's surprise at his seamless return without anyone noticing. He noticed he possessed a completely healthy body. The disappearance of all his previous injuries pushed Chen to doubt for a moment whether his epic in that dimension was merely a dream. But a digital certainty came to him when he opened his interface to clearly see level 10 and the spoils saved in the system, dispelling doubt with certainty. Here he smiled in anticipation of a realized miracle, wondering passionately about the reaction of the mechanical assessment device to his new mythical surge. But his thoughts were interrupted when the voice of the arrogant roommate, Xiang Zhu, cut through his thought process with biting sarcasm. He gave him a look of contempt. The conceited roommate glared at Chen with clear condescension, preparing to unleash the toxins of his mockery. He began with a disgusting taunt, mocking the hero's imaginary heroisms, which Ma Long had passionately promoted all night. Then he issued a hollow challenge, provoking the hero and challenging his alleged ability to seize the title of strongest in this miserable room, and presented him with an invitation to exposure, a malicious invitation to head immediately to the assessment arena, aiming to demolish Ma Long's legends and expose their weakness before everyone. With blind pride, the roommate bragged about the status of the room, most of whose residents reside at the bottom of the pathetic Rank E classification, and resorted to class-based boasting, claiming his abilities sat on the throne of the middle class, D, compared to the bottom where the hero lives. With excessive claim of power, bragging about his superior ability to crush 10 weak students at once thanks to his alleged class superiority. He was living a deluded euphoria as Xiang advanced with a swagger in his step, believing in his recent breakthrough of the class barrier toward the higher rank. In an attempt to motivate his comrade, Ma Long whispered enthusiastically in Chen's ear, begging him to explode his energy today to shatter their arrogant roommate's ego. The hero replied with silent mockery, smiling with deadly disdain at their miserable and limited ceiling of ambition, which barely aims for rank D. After moments of arrival, the great assessment arena swallowed the three roommates amidst its suffocating crowd and massive throngs. The arena was in a state of boiling. A savage enthusiasm and a charged atmosphere dominated the thousands of students nervously waiting to test their powers. Suddenly, danger was spotted when Zhang's eyes caught the bully Guangchang's gang rudely pushing through the student ranks with clear bullying. Panic set into his limbs, and quickly the mask of his arrogance fell as Zhang suggested fleeing and hiding immediately to avoid the gang's brutality. They had fallen into a predicament as blood froze in their veins following the direct meeting of gazes between the roommates and those angry scoundrels. But a shocking and unexpected reaction occurred. Instead of the usual attack and threat, the gang froze in their places like stone statues the moment they saw Chen. A sudden, inexplicable terror took hold of everyone. As soon as the gang members' eyes fell on Chen, their features were paralyzed with fear, as if they had seen the Grim Reaper himself. This was followed by an absurd submission. The bullying gang bowed in unison with a humiliating harmony, welcoming Chen as an elder brother with a fear and groveling that sparked everyone's astonishment. The roommate's shock was indescribable. Zhang Tzu stood stunned by the kneeling of this harsh gang to his once weak classmate, making him certain of the truth and horror of the story Ma Long had told. But Chen responded with cold indifference. He walked among the trembling gang members with total coldness and icy eyes, completely ignoring their humiliating submission as if they were mere ants in his path. Here, an obstruction occurred. Out of nowhere, Zhang Jian, with a massive body covered in scars, emerged to insolently block the hero's path. He began with direct provocation. This leader mocked the incident of the defeat of their leader's younger brother the previous day, considering it an unforgivable insult. He issued a veiled threat, reminding of the kinship between the victim and the student council leader, in an attempt to intimidate the hero and break his morale. For he had a terrifying reputation, the students whispered in fear among themselves, knowing for certain that this massive newcomer was the fiercest and bloodiest of the leader's watchdogs. Tension and questioning filled the arena, overwhelming amazement at a powerful rank D warrior directing his anger and attention towards a forgotten and weak student like Chen. With unbearable arrogance, Zhang approached closer, boastfully claiming his superior ability as an awakened to smell the scent of pure power from his opponents. He directed a biting insult at him, openly despising the hero, claiming with a rough laugh that he smelled nothing from Chen's body but the scent of failure, the bottom, and helplessness. But the sarcastic response came like a slap. Chen answered him with icy coldness, mockingly asking if this opponent was crossbred from a bloodhound lineage. A blind anger ignited in the opponent's eyes, the leader's face flushed with blood, ready to pounce and crush this rebel after his public insult. But the leader's intervention stopped everything, as Longshang's calm and cold voice suddenly cut through the arena to stop his raging dog before he could strike. He issued a sudden, fair decision. The leader announced his personal responsibility for his brother's reckless behavior, clearing the hero of any consequences for the time being. Zhang executed blind obedience. He retreated submissively, bowing with absolute respect in compliance with his master's direct orders without any discussion. A silent confrontation began, as the leader cast searching, cold, and piercing looks towards the hero, attempting to probe his depths and discover his secret. Zhang responded with a visual challenge. He exchanged looks with the leader with total steadfastness and a cold fighting spirit, without blinking or taking a step back. They were interrupted by the assessment call. The professor's voice boomed through the loudspeakers, announcing the start of the official assessment and ordering students to step forward according to the established numerical sequence.
The leader showed ultimate disdain. He withdrew quietly from the arena, believing in his heart that the hero was just a nobody who posed no real threat to his ambitions. Meanwhile, there was a high-level observation. The official Ling Yu was watching the tense scene with great interest from a high window overlooking the arena. Her companion raised a question, expressing his surprise at why a high-level official would be interested in watching a trivial dispute between mere ordinary students at the bottom. She replied with an amusing prediction and a mysterious smile, expressing her expectation that today's assessment would carry shocking surprises and an unprecedentedly entertaining show. As time passed, the calling of the roommate came. Shang Zhu's name was announced over the loudspeakers after a long and tense hour since the start of the tests. He stepped forward with blind confidence. The conceited roommate walked with excessive confidence towards the platform, determined to explode his alleged energy and dazzle the gathered crowds. He entered the testing booth. Shang stepped into the isolated testing chamber, which was equipped with the latest magical measurement devices. It was a sophisticated, simulated environment. The assessment rituals were conducted in a virtual environment that accurately simulated a low-level demonic rift to ensure measurement precision. In the center sat the measurement heart,
Heart, a massive crystal device dedicated to absorbing and precisely measuring the maximum magical energy secreted by the student. The task was to discharge energy. The harsh test required the awakened to discharge their entire essence of power all at once into this device. He began the attack. Xiang struck the device with his magical mace's aura with all his might, standing waiting for his result with pride. The measurement process began. The crystal heart absorbed the explosive energy, immediately passed it to complex assessment devices for analysis. The decoding process launched. Advanced processors analyzed the essence of the pure energy released by the roommate to calculate its actual power. The disappointing result arrived. The screen lit up coldly, announcing his classification in the middle tier of rank E only, shattering all his ego. But there was a missing indicator. The observer certified the preliminary result, waiting for a crucial and additional indicator determined by the system to be uploaded. It is the future potential indicator. The device anticipates the student's maximum future evolution ceiling, which is considered the true gold standard for talent. He possessed a limited ceiling. The roommate's result determined that the maximum future evolution he could reach in his life was rank C. He felt bitter disappointment. The roommate's dreams of reaching rank D today evaporated, realizing his stagnation and that he would remain at the bottom for the next 2 years. He received consolation from his companions. The rest tried to comfort him in silence, while the calling of names continued to echo in the arena without stopping. The confirmation of failure came. The results of the 2 companions, Shang Yu and Ma Long, matched expectations, rightfully falling to the bottom of the low rank E. Suddenly, an exceptional result appeared. A violent shock froze the trio and all those present before a staggering and unexpected number that suddenly appeared on the giant screen. The first D illuminated. The first rank D result of the year illuminated, sparking a mad cheer and cries of admiration among thousands of students. It served as a barrier breaker. Another student reaped rank D as well, with terrifying future potential that touched the threshold of rank A. This caused collective frustration for the companions. The trio sank into total despair, as this student was the 8th to reach rank D, while they remained in the depths of oblivion. Staff bewilderment pervaded the place, as the Academy administration was surprised by the unprecedented number of elite students this year, which exceeded all possible expectations. Amid suffocating anticipation, the observer stood ready to announce the single name that the entire arena was waiting for with bated breath. The feared name echoed through the loudspeakers, the call for Guang Cheng, the absolute and strongest leader of the student council. A mad cheer erupted. The arena roared with thunderous applause and a warm welcome for the young lord of the great Empire Guild. In contrast, with total coldness, Chen stood watching the blind celebration of the crowds from his dark corner with icy looks devoid of any emotion. A terrifying question floated in everyone's minds as the crowds anticipated the new horizons and numbers the leader would break today, especially after 2 years since he reached rank D. Isolation imposed itself as the scene shifted to the heart of the glass testing booth, completely isolated from this external noise. The machine's readiness was announced. The demonic heart device began to prepare and flash to measure the dominant aura possessed by the student council leader. With silent pride, the leader stood tall before the assessment device, ready to display his power and prove his absolute dominance over everyone. With a cunning tactical trick, Guang decided to suppress a large portion of his actual energy, preferring to hide his true trump cards for future battles. Driven by blind confidence and the absolute certainty that even his restricted and suppressed energy was entirely sufficient to immortalize his name as the first in the Academy's history, the data analysis process began as the device's complex algorithms processed the leader's formidable energy with extreme precision to display the final result. The observer's bewilderment occurred as he was shocked by the reading of the unique and anomalous color spectrum of Guang's energy, which had never been seen before. The screen flashed with a legendary result, announcing his reaching the upper tier of rank D, with terrifying future potential touching the ceiling of rank S. An explosion of the field occurred. A mass hysteria swept the arena, celebrating the leader combining present strength with a future of rank S, which is considered a form of the impossible. The entourage's celebration began, as Zhang and the rest of his followers cheered with euphoria and pride for their master, who had just shattered all the Academy's records. While a comrade's paralysis struck everyone, Ma Long and his colleagues froze in their place from shock, completely unable to comprehend this overwhelming historical achievement. An academic alert was announced. Senior staff hurried to submit urgent reports to the High Command, considering the young leader a rare national treasure that must be protected by all means, granting him doubled influence, especially with the constant reminder of him being the legitimate and sole heir to the dominant Empire Guild.
This served as a media earthquake. It was certain that the result of this assessment would headline every national news agency before tomorrow's dawn. From a high observation point, the duo watched with admiration mixed with suspicion the unprecedented emergence of multiple extraordinary talents in a single batch. The dean's question was raised, as Yuan Long asked the official Ling Yu if her personal presence today was due to her prior knowledge of Guang's true power. She replied with a flat denial, as the official coldly confirmed that she did not carve out her time and attend merely to applaud the achievements of this young leader. She showed a hidden intention. A mysterious smile appeared on her lips, revealing another secret purpose she considered far more important than the leader himself. The true goal was, the official's curiosity was entirely and passionately focused on seeing the performance of this forgotten student, Chen. Finally, the awaited call came, as the loudspeaker boomed with the name of Si Chen, the student residing in the shadows whom no one had paid any attention to. Yang greeted him with preemptive contempt, attacking the hero with biting words, warning him against causing a new and humiliating scandal for their room. He issued an insulting warning, considering that Chen's inevitable failure would serve as the final crowning of their room as the biggest pathetic joke in the Academy's history. With ugly arrogance, the leader continued his boasting that this pack of outcasts and weaklings bring nothing but shame to the prestigious academy. Here, the comrade's defense emerged, as Ma Long roared angrily in the face of the conceited one, demanding he swallow his words and wait for the silencing result. He had a blind certainty, absolute and total confidence that his friend's energy, which he saw with his own eyes, would inevitably blow the minds of these doubters. Meanwhile, tension and doubt prevailed, clear anxiety among the rest of the comrades, and their silent skepticism regarding the actual result expected from this mad challenge. With confident steps, he moved with icy steps. Chen stepped into the closed booth and advanced with complete coldness towards the assessment device. The machine's terror occurred in an impossible phenomenon. The demonic heart device seemed to actually tremble and shrink in fear as soon as it sensed the hero's destructive aura. He began gathering energy as Chen took a strict attack stance, ready to discharge all his restored demonic power into this device. Accompanied by a logical analysis, for the hero realized perfectly that proving his power to join the great guilds is the only survival gate for any awakened. This arena was the theater of merit, and the definitive certainty that this final assessment is the golden and only opportunity to seize recognition and prove absolute power before the entire world. A grand prize awaited the victors. The members of the first-place team would be recruited immediately and directly into the ranks of the great Empire Guild. Here, a hidden purpose was revealed. This power test was not just a hollow display of ranks, but a crucial preliminary step to sort alliances and form the strongest combat teams. Polarization began. The leader Jiang hurried to include the new awakened Lin, who had just obtained rank D, into the ranks of his powerful Master's Alliance. They were overcome by premature ego, boasting about securing the crown of victory in advance after their amazing success in gathering 3 rank D awakened into one conquering team. Talent hunting was the true and greatest goal of this assessment, merging the elite and strongest elements in preparation for the final and deadly epic. Meanwhile, the weak were clearly rejected. Those with low classifications were isolated into fragile teams, becoming mere bloody offerings ready for the coming slaughter. In the meantime, increasing anxiety prevailed. Mao Long and his comrades' doubts escalated due to their friend's suspicious and worrying delay inside the testing booth. A silent black screen remained. There was no data or response from the giant scoreboard until this moment. Biting sarcasm arose. The crowds began to mock and laugh, believing the hero's energy was far too weak for the sensitive device to pick up. The leader directed a final contempt. He decided to leave with his complete team, looking down with disdain at all the outcasts remaining in the arena. He gave a signal to depart. The leader Guang motioned for his team to leave after this boring show for him had ended. Suddenly, a resounding surprise struck the arena. The screen glowed with a bright light, revealing the hero's numbers exactly as the gang turned to leave. It was a staggering digital shock. Chen's classification was clearly announced in the upper tier of rank D. Mass bewilderment occurred. The crowds and comrades refused to believe this impossible result glittering before their wide-open eyes. The victory cheer rose when Ma Long broke the silence with a mad shout of celebration, proud of his friend's hidden power that silenced everyone. The arrogance of the conceited was paralyzed. The shock froze the blood of the leader and their follower in their veins, completely silencing their arrogance before these numbers. But an emergency warning flashed. A red light filled the booth, announcing a malfunction in data stability and requesting the system to re-evaluate immediately. The hero realized it was mere raw power. His basic human body, devoid of activating any class energy, alone equaled the peak of rank D.
Here, he decided to raise the challenge. Chen calmly proceeded to activate one of his many combat classes to escalate the result and test the machine. He began with a simple initial activation, summoning the aura of the Hell Cloud King, which was merely the weakest class in his dark arsenal. A mad leap occurred. The screen jumped frantically to adjust the assessment suddenly, leaping from D to the middle tier of C. Double confusion prevailed. The crowds were shocked by this mad and sudden change in the automated assessment readings, which are never wrong. In a state of opponent's denial, Zhang screamed in panic at the top of his voice, justifying this result by the existence of a catastrophic failure in the academy system. Academy terror spread. Senior staff froze in their places, certain of the collapse of the system's algorithms before this terrifying and unprecedented fluctuation. The machine began to suffocate. With repeated sirens, the demonic heart suffered and groaned under the weight of this formidable pressure. The hero made the decision to reveal. He decided to show his true, terrifying face to find his actual power ceiling and destroy any remaining doubts. He released the Absolute Curse. Chen unleashed the mighty Rakshas Star Purgatory class, letting his energy explode without restriction. The device began to crack. The solid demonic heart split forcefully, unable to absorb the massive flood of energy sweeping through it. A nightmarish aura emanated. The arena ceiling split under a dominant and dark purple energy, suffocating the breath of all present without exception. Fear gripped the enemies. Guang and his gang stared at the dark sky in absolute panic from this sudden hell that swallowed them. Everyone realized it was a new history. The comrades were witnessing today the birth of a true legendary entity emerging from the womb of their miserable and despised room. The probability screen drew a golden future. It struggled violently under the weight of the energy to display the amazing rank S. A second shock hit them. The observers' screams rose in terror at the appearance of another rank S legend on the same day and in the same place. Pride was crushed. The arrogance of leader Guang evaporated entirely, leaving him paralyzed and helpless before this terrifying display of absolute power. A red alert was launched. All screens turned the color of blood, releasing consecutive warning flashes of an imminent catastrophe that would sweep the place. A total collapse began, with the official announcement of the entire system falling and the giant machine beginning to shake violently, signaling an explosion. At the last moment, the screen uttered the impossible rank. The legendary SSS assessment appeared clearly before the system completely collapsed for exceeding its maximum capacity. The arena witnessed the collapse of officials. One of the senior academy staff fell to his knees in weakness, screaming from the horror of what he saw with his own eyes. Suddenly, a resounding explosion occurred. The glass assessment booth shattered and its shards scattered, turning in a single second into a flaming pile of ruin. Staff panic prevailed. There was a mad rush by the professors to retrieve Chen's body, amidst hysterical screams warning of the melting of the machine's magical core. Smoke intrusion began, in a panicked and desperate search through the flaming rubble, hoping to find any pulse proving the hero remained alive. With the clearing of the thick dust, the catastrophic scene began to clarify very slowly before the chief observer's terrified eyes. The observer's finishing shock hit him when he saw the legendary demonic heart turned into a mere fragile gray shell, completely drained of any energy. One of the observers hurried to provide a flimsy justification, explaining the sudden burning of the device by its wear and age due to continuous and intensive use by thousands of students. But there was a silent realization. Chen was fully aware that he was the true cause of devouring the machine's heart following the momentary release of his terrifying energy. Reaching a terrifying certainty by discovering that his forbidden ability, Absolute Devour, is capable of devouring and absorbing the energy of machines and inanimate objects as well. In a scene resembling an angelic exit, Chen left the flaming wreckage with calm steps, completely safe and without a single scratch touching him. He decided on a test of insight. The hero quietly activated a new visual ability to test the limits of his piercing vision amidst this stunned field. Superhuman vision was granted to him as the Star Purgatory Eye enabled him to penetrate auras and read the hidden ranks and actual levels of everyone present with precision. He realized it would serve as a secret weapon, that this piercing insight would penetrate the darkest plots of tyrants, guiding him like a compass in this false world. Here, the leader's secret was exposed. The insight showed Chen that Guangsheng was suppressing within him a massive energy far exceeding what he had displayed moments ago. A suspension of assessment was announced. The Academy administration was forced to stop the rest of the tests immediately, raising the white flag before this sudden ruin. Official censorship was practiced, as it was announced over the speakers that the hero's mythical result was merely a technical glitch in the device, and the assessment was postponed until the following day. But this did not prevent the comrades' celebration, as Ma Long and his bang ignored these flimsy justifications and began celebrating madly the brilliance and hidden power of their friend. A rude accusation interrupted them as the follower Zhang Jian stepped forward, shouting angrily, accusing the hero of intentionally sabotaging the measurement device to hide his true weakness. The follower's anger exploded, expressing extreme resentment at wasting his master's precious time in the student council because of this trivial incident. Chen reached the end of his patience. Blue lightning sparks began to dance hiddenly between his fingers, preparing to strike and silence this annoying leader. The intent to crush manifested in him. The hero thought with cold seriousness of annihilating this bully right here and now to relieve the entire world of his hollowed shatter. Suddenly, the leader's intervention occurred. Guang Shen stepped forward to stop his follower with a gesture of his hand, describing the hero as the mysterious new colleague in their team. This was the follower's jolt. Zhang froze in his place in a state of total bewilderment and disbelief at his master's unexpected declaration. It was a booby-trapped invitation, in which the leader presented a diplomatic and cunning offer to officially join Chen to his elite team in the final assessment test. And he tempted him with promises of the summit, confirming that they would be able together to sweep all records and top the Academy's hierarchy undisputed if they united their forces. The comrade's surprise prevailed. The eyes of the hero's friends widened in amazement at his receipt of a personal and direct invitation from the strongest and most influential leader. A burning malice ignited in Zhang's chest, for his anger stemmed from his realization that including this hero would inevitably cost the expulsion of another member from their complete team. He was driven by blind jealousy. The follower deeply resented that the free and precious elite seat was granted to an outcast student residing at the bottom of the academy. But he showed total submission, surrendering completely to his master's absolute will and realizing with bitterness his true position as a mere pawn being moved on a chessboard. With a fake smile, the follower swallowed his wounded pride, forcing himself to welcome the hero with a slight bow and a manufactured smile that almost tore. But a flat refusal came, as Chen shocked the entire arena by kicking the leader's golden invitation away with extreme coldness and without a single shred of hesitation. Mental paralysis struck everyone. The follower Zhang was completely unable to speak or move before the horror of this insulting slap delivered to his master publicly. They witnessed the cracking of ego. The leader's fake calmness collapsed to be replaced with a dark and gloomy look as he struggled to comprehend this insolent rebellion. He delivered another icy slap as Chen silenced the followers' anger with total coldness and a provocative disregard for all their influence and status they bragged about. He issued a final warning, alerting them in a tone that made the skin crawl not to cross his path again before turning his back coldly in preparation to leave. The withdrawal began. Chen left the arena with confident steps accompanied by his stunned friend Ma Long, leaving the follower behind him burning with the fire of his helpless malice. Terrified whispers arose. The crowds were left in a state of shock, whispering in fear about the madness of this mysterious boy who dared to insult the most powerful council leader.